Hello, dear chess lovers. Our attacking motif series continues today with how to organize same-side castling attacks, how to create attacks when the kings have castled on the same flanks, just like here. It's white to play here, folks. Karpov, Taimanov. How would you play this position with the white pieces? Please create a middle game plan for white. You see, folks, we were discussing how to sacrifice a piece to remove the pawn cover around the enemy king. How do we organize pawn storms? And also, how do we find the weakest points around the enemy king? That's what we looked at so far in the series, The Anatomy of Attack in Chess. And since so many of you asked me to make a video about this, same side castling attacks, how do we judge? How do we prepare? What are the conditions for us to go for attack when the kings are placed on the same area, right? Let's say on the king side in this case. How do we smell the attacking cues from the environment, right? That's the question today. So, first things first, it's the piece concentration, obviously, folks. That's the first signal, right? In this position, white, thanks to the pawn on e5, they have more space on the king side especially, right? And if you look at the black pieces, they are all placed on the queen side. So that's the first signal. When you can organize your pieces, transfer your pieces easily to the king side where the enemy king lives, then we can organize an attack. We can start an attack on that side of the board in general. We will see how Karpov evolves his attack from this position, but that's the first cue, so to speak. And you're a great player if you come up with the move h4. Simply wants to push the pawn to h5 and h6, just like alpha 0, to create a concession around the black king, right? You see the effect of the h-pawn moving already from here. He's organizing an attack on the king side. Taimanov goes h6, but Karpov insists. Many players would shy away from pushing the pawns in front of their king. That's also what we are fighting against in this episode, right? The space is acting like a shield, protective shield, protecting the white king in this position. It's the enemy king who will be less safe after those pawns are going to be in contact with each other. Just like in a pawn storm position, Karpov is pushing pawns in front of his king for the same reason, right? White has so many pieces on the king side, and black is in no position to exploit the weakenings on the king side, right? Because who can attack my king? That's the question you must ask yourself. Look at their pieces. Queen b7 was chosen by Taimanov, and here Karpov first plays h5. g5 was also possible, by the way. This is also a good move. Pawn break. We want to open up lines. And if black closes with h5, you tell me the next move for white, folks. You tell me. Yes, g6. Opening up lines on the king side. fg, knight g5. And our pieces are storming to the king side, putting pressure on e6. And maybe queen f4 to f7 and so on. You get the gist of the attack. The attack is also growing here. But Karpov first chose to play h5 so that after g5, black can no longer push h5. This was the point. An attack is growing. The next move, you tell me, of course g5. He wants to activate his pieces and open up lines against the enemy king. Takes. Good knight versus bad bishop scenario created in his positions. Now become a French pawn structure and the attack is raging. Advanced French signified by the pawn on e5, of course, right? Giving attacking chances to white on the king side. Takes. Already here, you should see something. The black king is less safe now. There are ideas like h6, even ideas like this, folks. The rook lift is coming, just like here, right? Karpov is bringing more pieces to the king side, and the attack is evolving. You see how he created an attack out of nothing on the king side by pushing h4, g4, h5, g5, and so on. And black was completely helpless against this. Queen b4. Are we blundering stuff, or did Karpov calculate? Of course, Karpov calculate this. Rook g3 creates a mate in one thread, so black cannot take the knight on d4. Rook g8, and here comes knight f3. 3 attackers on the king side, only a single defender, and Mikhail Tal said 3 versus 1 is usually decisive. 3 attackers, 1 defenders, usually decisive. And here we transition to an interesting point. I made a video about this, the multi-purpose moves in chess, and this was the position in that video, folks. Here it's white to play. Can you please find a multi-purpose move with the queen in this position? You want to play knight g5 check to also exploit this, but the queen is in the way. So congratulations if you found Karpov's move, queen c1. Couple of ideas. Knight g5 check, discovery on the queen, but also we are taking away all kind of checks from the queen. If queen e7, by the way, folks, some of you mentioned this to me, it's not the same because here you're giving one full tempo to black to give this check, so they avoid this discovery, and now they will go bishop e8 to defend f7. And yes, you can do this check, but their bad bishop will be traded off for your good knight, and here actually black is surviving this position incredibly. After king h7, they are surviving in this position, right? Takes, white is better in rook endgame, but we don't want to do this. That's why Karpov's queen c1 is so multifunctional, right? Knight g5 check is coming, you see? Knight f7 check, and he just goes back like a pendulum with the queen. You see, 3 attackers, only 1 defender. They are totally helpless. The rook cannot move because of queen takes g7 mate. They tried 1 check, but Taimanov resigned here. Why did he resign? How do we finish after queen f5? You stop the video and you tell me the finishing blow for white. Yes, folks, mate in 2. Queen g6 check. You have to take my queen, otherwise you get mated. And here, what a beautiful mate this is, right? The king gets mated after h takes g6 and the game is over. Is it a surprise? No, because white already had so many pieces concentrated against the enemy king, right? Mikhail Tal's ratio is holding here. 3 attackers, 1 defender usually leads to mate. He said it's, again, we see one motif that leads to mate because of white concentration of the pieces on the king side, right? So this is the first lesson. You get the cues from the environment. You have more space on the king side. You can bring more pieces to the attack with rook lifts and so on, right? Then you can go for the attack. Because also look at the enemy pieces. They are in Siberia. They are on the other side. And that's a final cue for us to start an attack against the enemy king, even though both kings are castled on the same flank. The beautiful game between Magnus Carlsen and Vishy Anand in 2012. It's white to play, folks. Please stop the video, read the board properly. What are you seeing and how would you play with the white pieces? Can you guess Magnus's middle game idea here with white? Folks, you're a great player if you first of all spotted that your pieces has potential on the king side. Again, black pieces are almost all of them are on the queen side. Knight on g7 could be a terrible piece, and that's the first condition. Which move do you think Magnus start with to bury that knight? And you're a great player. The art of burying pieces. That knight on g7 is now becoming totally shut down from the game, and Magnus doesn't shy away from pushing the pawn in front of his king for that purpose, right? Because black is in no position to attack the white king in this position. Rook c6. Vishy wants to defend e6. And here comes the key question. How did Magnus organize his pieces to attack the black king? That's my first question. Please stop the video and figure out for yourself. Then I'll give you the first prompt. The prompt is this, folks. We made a video about this. What could be the weakest point around the black king? And how do you coordinate your knight and queen on that weakness? I ask you to shuffle your pieces, right? You can make 3 moves in a row, for example, and identify the weakest point around the black king, and please coordinate your pieces accordingly. You're a great player if you found the move knight h3, folks. What a beautiful move this is. Retreat? What's the point? He's paving way for the queen to h6, and the knight is now eyeing the square g5. You see? Look at this. Knight h3 is such a beautiful multi-purpose move. Magnus wants to exploit the weakest point around the black king, that is h7. That's a nice consolidation of the previous video. I will post a link here on this video, folks. Attacking the weakest point. Queen h6 is coming, and now knight g5 is next. So Vishy found the only defense, right? The only way to defend h7 is having a knight on f6. But we don't stop here. The attack is evolving for white because white already has great pieces on the king side, and we can bring reinforcements to the attack. And you tell me, how do we bring reinforcements in this position? Vishy played d3. Please tell me which piece should join the party and how. You're a great player, folks. If you found Magnus's move, rook e5, that's a very powerful move. Rook lift on the 5th rank, interesting, right? Usually we see this on 3rd rank or 4th rank. Here, Magnus's rook is lifting using the 5th rank. And we see the point very, very soon, folks. He played king h8. What if Vichy ignored Magnus? What if he played the most natural move, rook d8? Can you please tell me, what was Magnus Carlsen's plan with white in this position? How do you finish the attack? Again, 3 attackers and only 1 defender. Mikhail Tal will be happy, folks. Yes, knight takes h7 is the killer. We sacrifice the knight only momentarily, because after takes, you take on g6 to check. If the king does this, now you see the point of rook e5, right? Now it becomes apparent. After rook h5, black cannot defend the knight on h7, and it's beautiful mate on the next turn. Look at the black pieces. They are sleeping on the queen side, and look at the beautiful idea of rook e5, folks, right? This was the direct idea behind this move. So you have to go to f8 with the king, but then of course I take on h7 and everything is collapsing, right? Like your king will be mated again in a few moves in this position. You're totally helpless attacking without sacrificing for white, and it's just a success. After rook e5, folks, he tried king h8, Vichy Anand, and Magnus played a very, very simple move, rook d1, hitting the pawn directly. You see, after king h8, this move is no longer possible. If Vichy went rook d8, then comes knight f7 fork. It doesn't work for black, which means Magnus will take on d3 very, very easily, very, very soonish. And after queen a6, one final question. Do you take on d3 and allow queen takes a2? Or do you defend your pawn with the push a4 in this position? Please stop the video and judge which will be more technical finish, a4 or rook takes d3. And you're a great player if you found Magnus's move a4, no counterplay given to the black pieces, and he will take on d3 on the next turn, right? Rook d6 is not possible because of this. Rook d8 is not possible because of this. And the pawn, black's only source of counterplay, is going on the next turn. And Vichy resigned in this position. After some other move, I will take on d3 and you have nothing else. After queen a5, I can still take on d3 because queen e1 is not possible because of the rook, right? It's an incredibly beautiful idea, again for white, to organize their pieces, starting from the move g4, right? It's a beautiful idea to bury the knight and slowly transport his pieces. That's vintage Magnus, by the way, right? He finds great tasks to all of his pieces, coordination master, and also he's looking at those weaknesses. He's bringing more pieces to the attack, and once 3 versus 1 is formed on the king side, black is helpless. They cannot defend this position anymore, right? Let's see how Garry Kasparov finished off this attack with the white pieces. That's a very famous game of Garry Kasparov, early Garry. He was very young here. White to play, folks. How do you organize and continue your attack on the king side? First things first, folks. We are down a pawn with white, but if you look at the white pieces, vintage Garry, he organized all of his pieces nicely on the king side. Both kings have castle short, so why is white playing for an attack? Well, very simple, right? We have concentration of the pieces eyeing the king side. We have piece potential to attack you. It's justified for white to attack the black king. Again, we see the beautiful e5 pawn in the structure, giving so much space to white. This bishop is a beautiful creature too, right? But how do you improve your attack in this position? Can you please tell me Garry's next move, folks? You're a great player if you found Garry's move, rook f6. What a beautiful move this is, right? It's an incredibly juicy move to see. What's the point? If you take my rook, then you see the point of this, right? Queen h6, just mate on the board. The rook cannot be captured, but if you do nothing, then white will take on h6 twice and still mate you, right? So by going rook f6, Garry is introducing a mate in 2 threat while also bringing one more attacker to the party, right? Now this becomes relevant, for example, for white to exploit. Why? Because white is 4 attackers versus, let's say, single defender on e6. So this forces knight g5, you see? If he goes knight f8, then doesn't change anything. I can even take with the queen, by the way, folks. Look at this. A queen sacrifice ends up with mate. Lovely. So after rook f6, he tried knight g5. And again, you stop the video here and please tell me how Garry continued in this position with white. You're a great player if you simply exchanged that knight. Typical exchange sacrifice. Also, you got a pawn in return. What did white achieve? They opened the h file and they removed the only defender away from the board. Now Gary's betting on the fact that he has 3 attackers versus very few defenders on the king side, right? It's very simple. Simple exchange. 3 versus 1 will decide according to Gary's vision. I'm pretty sure he played the move without much calculation, right? Just the typical standard stock standard exchange sacrifice to intensify the attack. He played king g8, folks. If he took the rook, you tell me. Please stop the video and tell me the forcing mate for white. Please calculate. You're a great player if you calculate the sequence. Queen h6 or even queen h5, doesn't matter. King g7, check, check, and mate. Look at this, right? The queen is stopping the king from escaping on that side. You see? Very simple mate. 3 attackers, only 1 defender. The game is over. So king g8 was tried in the actual game. And Gary, again, he doesn't just move the rook away because the queen will be hanging. He plays the move queen h4. Very simple idea. I want to mate you in 2 moves, right? Queen h7, king f8, queen h8 is mate. The attack is raging. So he tried queen a3 because he wants to simply vacate the e7 square for his king. And here, Gary Kasparov played a very simple move, folks. Queen h7 according to the engine is winning, but that's a long line to calculate, right? Queen h7 check, queen h8 takes, you're dropping your bishop, but everything is working for you. But there are so many lines to calculate. There's rook f8 to calculate. There's queen takes d3 to calculate. Yes, white is winning, but Gary doesn't even bother after queen a3. He simply drops back the rook to f3. He defends the bishop, introduces bishop h7 check followed by queen a3, and he's keeping all 3 attackers on the king side, right? He's trusting his attack versus defense ratio in this case, and it's in fact true judgment because black has no defense in this position. He tries g6, the only way to stop queen h7, but a very simple move, bishop takes g6, hitting the queen, hitting h7 after queen takes f3. Should we directly take the queen back, folks, or do you see one Zwischenzug in this position? Yes, Zwischenzug queen h7 is even nicer, and black resigned because now I will take your queen and you cannot even take my bishop because of a very simple reason of this. And white is completely crashing this position. Black resigned. So what's the summary here? Of course, going back to the first position, concentration of the pieces. If we have so many attackers on the king side, yes, it's justified. We can even push pawns and so on, right? It's justified. You can never exploit my king, but I can exploit your king in this case. And Gary nicely showed us with a beautiful starting move, rook f6, and the attack was simply unstoppable, right? Black has no defense against it. Also, it just looks very difficult to play for black in this position, right? When you have so many sleeping pieces that don't contribute to the defense. One very important theme when it comes to same side attacks, folks, is the center and flank connection. I made a video about this. I will post a link to this video. Usually we have green light to attack on the flanks if and only if the central structure is fixed and stable. If the enemy can create central counterplay, then our attacks can fail because center is the most important area of the chessboard and they can create so many counterplay that can divert our kingside push. In this position, please, it's white to play, folks. Judge the position, evaluate the position first. Who is better and why? And please come up with a good move and good plan for white. Folks, you're a great player if you came up with the move g4, g5. That's a beautiful plan for white. We are attacking on the king side despite the fact that our king is also castled there. And can you tell me the reasons? I want you to explain to me the main reason why this is a great plan for white in this very position. Folks, I think it's a very simple reason. The center is so stable. The central structure is fixed. Black has no central pawn breaks, nothing to open up the center, and our attack on the flank has green light. We already have a beautiful pawn on f5 that gives us all the space on the king side. We want to play g5 followed by maybe f6 to open up more lines against the black king. We can even use that extra space to lift our pieces, bring more pieces to the king side. You see, black is restricted because of lack of space. White has a clear space advantage because of the pawns on d5 and f5 and so on. And this is used again, right? Once again, space is protecting our king. It's acting like a shield, protecting the king on g1. Black is in no position to exploit the move g4. Okay? Beautiful. For example, h6, h4, we can go with g5 next. By the way, that's a good defense for black. Usually it works. Early h6 and knight h7. They are fighting against the move g5. But you see, white has all the time in the world to bring more pieces to the king side. King g2 is a very nice move because rook h1 is coming next. And now white is ready for the push g5 in this position. For example, knight c5 hitting the bishop, but bishop b1 drops back. And now white is ready for such moves like queen g3 followed by g5. And if you ever take on g5 after I take back, my rook is awakening on the h file. Look how safe the white king is. But the black king's safety is only an illusion because g5 is coming now. At any point, this pawn break exists for white, and black is zero counterplay in the center of the board. Please look at the connection between center and flank to justify this plan for white. This is the best plan for white, but I can explain to you using words or the reason why that is a very effective plan for white. And I will contrast this with the next example. Please compare that position with this position, folks. It's almost identical, but if white goes g4, just like before, black is having a beautiful defensive idea. It's now the same position because the central structure is not fixed, which means black has this nice central move e4 to activate their pieces. The rook, it becomes awakened. The knight is gaining this e5 square, and they are distracting us from going for the flank push unhindered. You see, bishop f6 is coming, the bishop became a monster, the rook became a monster, the knight is coming to e5, and black gains direct central counterplay to basically divert us from achieving our plan, just like in the previous example with the move g5 and h4 and so on, right? It's a very typical and standard central counterplay with e4. By the way, here you can also start with the move h6 just to stop g5, and then, only then, go e4. By the way, e4 in this position is the only way for black to gain equality. Otherwise, white is driving your knight with g5 and f6 and so on. So that's his final exit for black to gain an equal position. And that's a very logical central counterpunch. Here, they will take on h4, activating their rook, knight e5s are coming. And you see, our attack is diverted. Why? Because they gained central play. You see the connection, right, guys? This is the gist of what I'm showing you. Please learn this. This is the basic learning experience for you right now. Also, you can use it, as I said, in defensive context. If they're hitting you with those early g4 moves, same side castle attacks, you have to look at the center first and foremost. Can I divert them? Can I distract them? Do I have a central counterplay? Do I have a central pawn break to change the picture? That's almost always the first question that will guide you in such cases. Let's consolidate this lesson with a beautiful game of Bobby James Fischer with the black pieces, okay? In this position, white, let's say, has more space on the king side, but the e4 pawn is giving black more space on the king side, right? So white is better on the queen side, black is better on the king side. In this position, if I give you two choices with white, do you go d5 or c5 with white? Which move is preferable for white? In the actual game, folks, he made a big mistake. He went c5 and they allowed Fischer. You tell me, how would you play with the black pieces here? Yes, they allowed Fischer to lock down the center, stabilize and fix the center. Thus, Fischer was gaining green light on the king side. We will see a carnage from this position on the king side, but this gave green light to Fischer to attack. c5 was a big mistake. Why should I play either d5 or b5? Some sort of a different move to try to open up lines on the queen side, to create some sort of counterplay before black is organizing an attack on the king side in this position, right? So d5 would definitely be better in this position. Of course, if you take on d5, then white will activate all of their pieces and they gain central counterplay to divert black from the king side push, correct? But if you go c5, d5 is coming and you see it's so secure, the pawn center. He tried b5 and Fischer from now on brings all the pieces to the king side. That resembles typical King's Indian formations, and Fischer was an expert in those King's Indian structures. He will attack nicely to a fianchetto structure, right? The king is protected by the bishop on g2. How can we go for a mating attack? But Fischer is showing us the way. That's also a great lesson to it, how to attack against fianchetto structure, folks. Knight g5. Bobby is activating the bad knights and bringing more pieces to the king side. Again, we see both the pawn on e4, pawn on h5, giving so much space to us, but also our pieces are concentrated mostly on the king side. That's why we have a green light to attack the white king. One more move, queen d7, very logical, connecting the rooks and activating the queen. King h2, bishop h6. Bobby doesn't play with bad pieces. This bishop was the only bad piece, and now even this guy will have ideas, such as exchanging off white's only good piece, the knight on f4. He tries a5, folks. White needs to get some sort of counterplay with a6, and here comes Bobby's next move. That's a stock standard piece sacrifice in those structures. That's my prompt to you. Which piece sacrifice looks very promising for black here, folks? I'm testing your attacking instincts, attacking patterns. You're a great player if you want Bobby's move, bishop g4, folks. That's a stock standard sacrifice. After hg, hg, you open up the h file, and this will become very relevant. This connects to our first video in the series, piece sacrifices to remove the pawn cover against the enemy king. That's the function of the sacrifice, plus Bobby is gaining the f3 outpost for his knight, right? That's a very, very multi-purpose piece sacrifice. Please learn this recurrent theme in those structures. That's a beautiful theme that you can apply in your games, folks. Rook h1, can you guess Bobby's next move? Of course, knight f3 check. That was the whole point. And now the fianchetto bishop is gone, the defender is gone, and it's replaced by the fishbone pawn on f3. This pawn is like a fishbone on the throat of the white king. It's just choking the white king. Look at the effect of the pawn on the attack from now on, folks. That's a beautiful game. King g1, hitting the bishop. Do you think we should take that knight or we should defend the bishop, folks? You're a great player. If you found Bobby's move, of course take that knight. That was the only defender of the king side, especially the light squares. And what's the next move? You tell me. How do we go for a mating attack against the white king? Yes, king g7. Very simple idea. We want to trade the rooks on h8 and enter through those light squares and attack and mate the white king. Look at those white pieces. Just like in previous examples, they are in Siberia. They cannot defend their king. f5. Well, he's trying some moves, maybe some bishop h6, but Bobby plays rook h8, also stopping bishop h6 check. Well, he's helpless. He tried to sacrifice the piece, but Bobby says, I can spend some time with that king because I got the piece back, and no one can stop this idea in this position. Here, queen d2 check. Do you go king g7 or g5, folks? Please tell me the right move. g5 is the good move, and basically you're stopping queen f4 defenses. You're having all the ideas, you have all the time in the world to take on f5 and enter through those light squares. Yeah, g5 is a very nice move, and white is basically helpless. He took on c6. Bobby doesn't even mind taking back. He takes back on f5, and now that's a huge threat, of course. Knight d1. He wants to defend those light squares with knight e3. Bobby plays the move anyways, forcing knight e3. And you tell me now the finishing move. Black played one move, and white resigned in this position, folks. There are several different ways, but I very much like king g6. Simple move. Rook h8 is coming. Weakest squares around the white king is h2 or h1. h1 namely, right? Because after rook h8, queen h1 is unstoppable basically. And he resigned. If he takes the pawn on b7, you play rook h8. And you see, no one can stop queen h1 mate anymore. It's an incredibly beautiful game by Bobby James Fischer. And white player paved the way for the attack by going c5. This is a nice connection between flank and center in chess. After c5, d5, black's counterplay with b5 was not dangerous at all. White should have kept the center more flexible, more fluid, and they should not have locked down the center like this. And again, this example shows us at some point when we have so many good-looking ideas on the king side, usually a piece sacrifice is necessary to gain more grounds. You always give and take in chess. You have to give something to get something back. In this case, the strength of bishop g4 is that it's such a multi-purpose sacrifice, right? Also like giving more room to the queen, also eyeing those light squares, opening up the h-file, creating the f3 square for knight. I mean, everything was ready for the sacrifice. See how he first improved every single piece. Every single piece improved first before he sacrificed the bishop. That's also very, very interesting, right? The timing of this sacrifice was so beautiful. And if you don't take the bishop, then I will play bishop f3 or knight f3 check anyways. I'm creating a monster on f3, right? So that's a very annoying bishop to actually even allow on g4. That's why he took on g4, but you see, against Bobby Fischer, you have no chance. With the fishbone on f3, with such a king on g1, and the attack is just, very simple actually. Once you see this position, all the moves are extremely simple and logical for black to play, right? I open the h-file, I mate your king on h1. That's why defending is very difficult in chess. Defending is a very concrete business, but some attacks can evolve using some principles, right? I'm sure Bobby's seen this many, many times before, this sacrifice. Yeah, this is a very thematic piece sacrifice in those structures. So this must have come very natural to him. And even the remaining moves, yeah, doesn't take much effort to even see and calculate. The game sort of plays itself in those positions, folks. But of course, the preparation phase was the most interesting, right? How he set up this entire structure, how he moved all of his pieces to the king side slowly like this, right? You see the effect of the h5 pawn, by the way, in supporting knight h7 too, right? One more point of h5, also stopping g4s, very standard, right? Alpha 0 also plays like this with h5 and e4 pawns, organizing an attack, preparing an attack on the king side like this. Let's consolidate what we learned with this example. This was your homework at some point, and now I'll show you the answer. If it was black to play, I gave you two choices. Do you go c4 or knight e6 in this position? If you haven't done your homework yet, please start the video and choose between these two moves, folks. One move is a chess crime. The other move is very, very strong and logical. Please think for yourself first. Folks, if you pay close attention, c4 will be a chess crime because you're locking down the center, right? You're locking down the center and you're giving a green light to white to attack us on the king side. They have all the good pieces eyeing the king side. Their pawn chain is pointing towards the king side. They were ready for f5 anyways in this position. And if you lock the center with the move c4, there is zero counterplay in the center. Now white is full green light to organize an attack on the king side. f6 is coming, knight f4s are coming, g4, g5s are coming, and you see, you don't have a knight e6 anymore, bad bishop on b7, just terrible position for black. If you take on f5, you allow knight h4. Knight f5s are coming, your king become weakened. The attack is raging to unstoppable proportions on the king side. It's all because of the move c4. Black voluntarily is shutting down the center and stopping all kind of central counterplay with this move. But if you play the move knight e6, that's much, much more stronger. You put pressure in the center on d4 and you don't lock down the center. You disturb white. You say, if you go f5, fine, I will take, and I'm still pressing. I'm still pressing your d4 point, right? For example, here I can take on d4, which wasn't there before. I took on d4, I destroyed your entire central pawn chain. The center has collapsed for white, and white has to be so careful in this position to hold the balance. We can even play f4 in this position, folks, just to show you the gist of this line. Queen g5, the queen is a good piece. If they go g4, king h8, we are not getting mated. We are not getting mated. Yes, white still has some good pieces on the king side, but because you kept the central structure fluid, you didn't lose this position in 4 moves. This was a very critical moment, right, in that position to choose between c4 and knight e6. And after this lesson, you have better understanding between the center and flank connection in chess. So you can also judge the enemy's attack to your king. Your sense of danger has improved after this video, and that's a function of this training. We always form connections by deeply engaging with the material. Hope you like this video, folks. If you like this, please give me a like and subscribe. That's very important for me to be able to produce similar content for you. I am really doing it to help you improve your game. I am curious about your future progress after you see my videos. Please check the entire playlist on how to attack, and I will catch you on the next episode on how we can become better attackers in chess. Bye bye.